You'd think that space, value and sheer capability would be priorities for MPV buyers. The sales figures might suggest otherwise, but if these remain key criteria in your search for a truly practical 7-seat people carrier, then it's well worth considering this one, SsangYong's Turismo. It's now a more palatable package thanks to the installation of a torquier 2.2-litre diesel beneath the bonnet, optionally paired to a smoother 7-speed auto gearbox. In terms of space and sensibility though, it's as you were, meaning that this model remains one of the most practical choices you can make in this segment. If you're looking for a really large MPV, then this contender might not have been one you were thinking about, but maybe it should be.
Looking for a properly sized large people carrier? Well, here's one you probably haven't considered. The much improved version of SsangYong's Turismo. Searching for a car of this kind can be a frustrating process. Well, let's assume that quite reasonably you want a 7-seat MPV that can actually seat 7 fully sized people, not 5 adults and 2 midgets at the very back. So a grand scenic sized compact model won't suit. And that just as reasonably you want those 7 folk to be able to bring a decent amount of luggage with them. So a Ford Galaxy or a Volkswagen Charan still won't be quite big enough. You'll need a diesel engine to keep running costs down, and a decently sized one so that there's plenty of pulling power when heavily laden or when towing. You also want a proper car, not a van with seats and windows. And you'll need to keep within a realistic family or business budget, say up to £25,000. It's a perfectly reasonable set of requirements, but only one model can meet them. This one. For SsangYong, being able to achieve all of this with a single product is nothing new. In 2004, the brand introduced the Rodius, a huge people carrier built on a 1990s Mercedes E-Class platform that shared its chassis with a luxury saloon called the Chairman that the company had made for its home South Korean market. A Rodius could tick all of the buying boxes we've just listed, but it looked ungainly and couldn't deliver the kind of running cost efficiency that European buyers wanted. Cue the £100 million investment that in 2013 allowed SsangYong to transform the Rodius into this Turismo model. Here, smart, sensible styling clothed the hugely practical 2-2-3 7-seater cabin layout, and buyers got updated engine wear. The car could even be ordered with a properly capable high and low ratio 4-wheel drive system, opening up people carrier ownership to buyers who previously, in the search for a 7-seater tow car, would have had to put up with a clunky large SUV. At first glance then, a very complete package, but one SsangYong was aware it would have to further perfect for widespread market acceptance. Hence the changes for the 2016 model year that brought us the much improved Turismo model that we're going to look at in this film. The key improvement lies beneath the bonnet. The previous 155 PS 2-litre EXDI diesel unit, now replaced by a 178 PS 2.2-litre EXDI 220 power plant that's not only pokier but significantly more efficient too. And there's the option of pairing it with a much smoother Mercedes-sourced 7-speed e-tronic automatic gearbox. On paper, what it all leaves us with is the best value, the most capable and the most practical 7-seat MPV on the market. But what's it like in reality? Let's find out. You might, quite reasonably, harbour a few concerns as to just how easy it might be to manoeuvre something of this Turismo's size. You think a Range Rover is big? Well, this car is 131mm longer, as well as being taller and pretty much just as heavy. All that being the case, it's something of a surprise to find how relatively straightforward day-to-day motoring is in this SsangYong. The boxy shape with its large glass area helps enormously here, as do the rear parking sensors that are standard on all but the entry-level variant. It all means that you should be able to adapt to the size of this car without too many issues. But what's the adjustment needed in terms of ride and handling for something this big and bulky? To be honest, we'd wondered about that too, but were reassured from the outset to learn that, well, unlike many similarly sized super large MPVs, this one has been developed from the beginning as a car rather than as a van, an approach that ought to pay dividends when it comes to the road going experience. Sure enough, to some extent, that is the case. Vans are typically engineered with very firm rides to suit the loads that they're going to have to carry, and that's a trait that tends to be carried over to the MPV variants that are created from them. This Turismo, in contrast, wafts you about in pillowy ride comfort that'll be welcomed by the long journeying folk that you'll have to carry. What these people won't be happy about is any temptation on your part to throw this SsangYong about through the twisty stuff. As you might expect, it doesn't take very kindly to that, floating about on its springs with plenty of body lean through the turns. Fortunately, the very light, rather vague steering discourages you from ever being tempted to drive in this way, although if you really have to, grip levels are actually quite reasonable. Of course, what's much more important is whether this MPV can offer exemplary cruising capability for the kind of major road and motorway use that will account for most of its mileage. This improved model is much better provided for in this respect, thanks to two things. First, the addition of a 178 PS 2.2 litre Euro 6 diesel engine beneath the bonnet, which is torquier and more powerful than the previous 155 PS 2 litre unit. And second, with the option of much more modern automatic transmission this time around, a Mercedes-sourced 7-speed e-tronic box. If you are going to buy this car, we'd suggest you stretch to the auto variant. We're trying it here. This smoother self-shifter, the perfect partner for the much improved power plant beneath the bonnet. Torque is up from 360 to 400 Newton meters, and you can access it all from just 1400 RPM, meaning that the engine's optimized for low-end pulling power, whatever the conditions, hence the useful maximum braked trailer towing weight of 2,000 kilograms. Naturally, with 178 PS powering a vehicle weighing just over 2 tons before you start packing it out with people, you're not going to win too many traffic light Grand Prix, but the torque at hand means that the Turismo will rarely struggle, even when it's fully loaded. In the case of the base SE and the mid-range EX Turismo models that most people will buy, the EXDI 220 diesel distributes its drive rearwards, but in the case of the top flagship ELX model that we're trying here, power can, if required, go both front and rearwards. For yes, this is the rarest of things, a four-wheel drive people carrier. In fact, it's rarer than that, given the provision of the kind of low-ratio gearbox you'd normally only find on a heavy-duty SUV. This is the first people carrier we can think of that's ever been equipped with such a thing. And it ought to make this vehicle extremely attractive to those who need to transport up to 7 people while towing and or negotiating difficult conditions. How difficult? Well, we wouldn't take one of these to the Serengeti. Approach, departure and ramp angles are all below 20 degrees. But having said that, the ground clearance you get, 175mm at the front and 195mm at the rear, is as much, if not more, than you get with some RAV4 style soft roaders. There probably are larger cars than this one currently on sale in the UK market, but just off the top of my head, for the moment, I can't think of one. The Turismo is a lofty 1.85 metres high, occupies a vast 2 metres of width and dwarfs a Range Rover by measuring well over 5 metres from end to end, including a central 3-metre wheelbase section that's bigger than the total length of some city cars. So it is big, very. Which was also true of this car's direct predecessor, the Rodius, but that was a car that neither disguised its bulk nor made any attempt to smarten it. This model, in contrast, exercises the cleverness of the modern stylist's pen, so its size looks manageable for a trip into the urban jungle, even if the tape measure suggests it to be just as huge as that Rodius ever was. SsangYong wants to position this car to appeal to buyers looking at 7-seat SUVs as well as 7-seat people carriers. Hence the bold, bluff front end with its angular grille, its chrome detailing strips and heavily emphasised bonnet character creases. The SUV theme continues in profile with these exaggerated wheel arch character lines. They sit just below this defining mid-level crease that starts ahead of these smart side repeaters before flowing back into the solid D-pillar, there to successfully cover the more extreme aspects of the old Rodius's original glassy structure. It's from this perspective that you get a real sense of the prodigious 5,130mm length on offer here, enough in other countries to allow this people carrier to accommodate 4 rows of seats. The tailgate's quite smart too, almost Ford Galaxy-like with its angular rear lamps and boomerang-shaped lower reflectors. A wraparound glass section balances the design, and further nice touches include a bee-sting aerial and this neat roof spoiler with its integrated stoplight. But of course, what matters is what lies within. Now, we could talk millimetres of headroom, wheelbase and such like, but in order to really get a handle on the size of this SsangYong, consider this. In some world markets, this exact same body shape is sold with 11 seats inside. Therefore, when you only try to accommodate 7 people, here in a layout that sees 2 at the front, 2 in individual chairs in the middle, and 3 on a bench at the back, you have a fairly unconfined amount of breathing space. This helps to solve that problem inherent in most 7-seat MPV style vehicles of having no luggage room available when all the seats are in use. Raise this rear hatch and you'll find that here it's very different. In fact, there's more space in the back of this Turismo when all the seats are in place than you'd get if, in the same configuration, you combine the luggage capacities of a Ford Galaxy, a Vauxhall Zafira Tourer and a Seat Alhambra. The volume in question amounts to 875 litres, although we have to point out that this figure is based upon this third row bench having been pushed forward as far as it'll go. Both second and third row seats, you see, can be slid forwards and backwards on recessed floor rails to prioritise either people or packages. There is no underfloor compartment, but you do get bag hooks and a useful 12-volt socket. If you need more luggage space, you can fold the backrest of the third row forward onto its base. Now, unfortunately, unlike more modern MPVs, the seats in this one don't fold flat into the floor. But that ups your luggage room to 1,975 litres. Or if you're feeling strong, you have an extra pair of hands to help, and you have garage storage, you can remove said bench completely and free up as much as 2,271 litres. Now, given the hassle involved, you'll probably only want to do this if you absolutely have to use the middle seats and you haven't released enough space by simply pushing them forward a bit. If these 2 central captain's chairs aren't needed by people and you're in a removal van frame of mind, it'll be much easier to simply fold them in half too. They don't fold into the floor either, in which case the amount of space available really does conform to removal van standards, 3,146 litres in total. Only huge van-based MPVs can better that, and few of them can match this SsangYong's premier party trick of being able to fold both its second and third row seating flat to make a pair of beds. This Turismo's certainly no camper van, but that is a useful feature even so. So much for baggage space, but what about room for people? Well, let's see. Unlike van-based rivals, you get conventionally opening doors. And once inside, the first thing you might have to get used to is the slightly strange cabin layout. And most people carriers have room for 3 in the middle and then 2 extra chairs at the very back. But here it's the other way around. Whether you like the arrangement or not, you can't deny that those sat in these 2 captain's chairs are certainly well provided for. Each seat slides backwards and forwards, it reclines, it's fitted with its own integral armrest, and it has enough legroom to remind you that this cabin works off the same kind of wheelbase size as a Mercedes S-Class limousine. This area is also where really small infants may have to travel, for it's the only part of the car where the chairs are fitted with Isofix child seat fastenings. Older travellers can benefit from these provided tray tables, plus there are seat-back storage nets to make up for the annoying lack of any door pockets. A 12-volt socket and a USB point are also on hand, as are reading lights and fan control for these neat ceiling vents. But wouldn't the conventional three-person middle seating arrangement that other MPVs offer be better? Well, you can see SsangYong's logic in not providing it here. If you're setting out to get into the third row, then there's room between the two individual middle chairs to walk through to the very back. And that's much easier than having to contort the middle seat with wheels and levers and folding it out of the way, as is the MPV norm, although you can also do that here if you really want to. On the other hand, it does mean that a family with 3 kids will have to travel with one of them relegated to the very rearmost seat. Now, that might be good for keeping fractious children apart, but such enforced separation may also induce tantrums should your brood be of the particularly unruly sort. It may be better then, when travelling 5 up, to get all 3 of your rearward passengers seated onto this third row bench. Back here, there will be proper adult-style first-class 747 levels of legroom. Yes, even if the 2 middle chairs are pulled right backwards. These can, as I mentioned earlier, be folded in half like this, creating a useful work surface with cup holders. And then everyone's happy. Well, almost everyone. The middle third row occupant will be placed on a foam-filled pad rather than a proper recessed seat base, and they'll also have to do without the twin cup holders and the storage areas that are thoughtfully provided for those on their left and their right. As a result, they may well feel that they've drawn the short straw. Time to move up front, where the position is high and SUV-like, offering a couple of things that you will need to adapt to. One is the foot-operated handbrake, and the other is the fact that through the large leather-stitched steering wheel, you view a set of warning lights rather than the usual instrument dials. These are mounted away to your left in the centre of the top of the dash, although they're well within your line of sight. SsangYong has tried to create as much of an upmarket feel as it can, notably with the addition of aluminium effect plastic detailing on the dash and the centre console. Shiny, easily scratched surfaces are, though, still more prevalent than you'd expect to see in a modern car at this kind of price. At least the fake wood is quite restrained. All models get a decent quality iPod compatible 6-speaker stereo system with Bluetooth connectivity, but you don't get any kind of centre dash infotainment display unless you pay extra for this optional Kenwood touchscreen setup. This includes a full navigation system plus a DAB tuner and DVD and video capability, along with access to selected apps like Aha. As for practicalities, well, it's true that some smaller rivals do offer more cabin storage space, but there's still plenty of it. The doors get upper and lower bins, plus a bottle holder, making up for the rather small glove box. Plus there's overhead space for your sunglasses and a deep central stowage area between the seats, positioned behind these twin cup holders. There are coin slots either side of the gear stick, which has 2 further storage areas in front of it, the larger one incorporating a couple of 12-volt sockets. And there are aux-in and USB points to the right of the climate control buttons on the centre stack. SsangYong reckons that this is the best value 7-seat MPV on the market, and as we're going to see, it's pretty hard to argue with them on that point. First though, to the Turismo model lineup. Every variant uses the same 178 PS version of the company's EXDI 220 diesel engine, and prices start from around £19,000 for the entry-level SE variant. Most customers, though, will probably want to find the extra £2,000 necessary to upgrade to leather-lined EX spec, which there's a £1,500 option of a Mercedes-sourced 7-speed auto gearbox. You must have auto transmission on your Turismo if you want 4-wheel drive, and top-of-the-range ELX spec, which means the necessary £25,000 asking price. Now, to that value pledge. The only way you could get yourself a brand new 7-seat people carrier for less than £19,000, and it wouldn't be much less, would be to get yourself a feebly powered version of a small van-derived MPV, say a Citroen Berlingo Multispace, a Ford Gran Tornado Connect, or a Fiat Doblo with extra third-row seating in the luggage compartment that you'll find won't be large enough for normal-sized adults. The third-row chairs that you'll find in a purpose-designed 7-seat compact-sized MPV, say a Ford Grand C-Max or a Peugeot 5008, aren't much roomier. And prices for diesel models here start around £21,000, or closer to £25,000 if you want an engine with the same kind of pulling power that you find in this Turismo. Go for something very slightly bigger, like a Ford S-Max, and if you want a diesel, you're looking at list prices starting from at least £25,000. And even then, you're talking in terms of luggage and people capacity way off that of the SsangYong. Conventional large segment MPVs like Ford's Galaxy and the Volkswagen Charan Seat Alhambra clones, priced in the £25,000 to £30,000 bracket, can't match this either. With all the seats in use, the luggage capacity in each case is less than half that of a Turismo. But we really need to be comparing apples with apples here. In other words, pitching this SsangYong against MPVs that, well, like this one, can properly take 7 people and all their luggage without resorting to things like roof boxes and trailers. Options here are far more limited and are entirely based around large vans with seats. Arguably the closest rival to this Turismo is Hyundai's i800, which seats 8 people, but is a very old design, priced at around £27,000, costing significantly more to run. If you can stretch to just over £30,000, you can look at 8 to 9-seater minibuses like Mercedes Vito Tourer, Volkswagen's Transporter Shuttle and Ford's Tornado Custom. Otherwise, beyond that, well, there's not much. Volkswagen Caravelle models sell mainly in the £31,000 to £35,000 bracket, but they only seat 6. And the 7-seater Mercedes V-Class costs from around £42,000. Ouch. We should also point out that none of these supersized 7-seat MPV contenders we've just mentioned offer the option of 4-wheel drive. And no MPV has ever provided the kind of low-range 4-wheel drive system this Turismo does for SUV-style towing capability in really difficult conditions. So, you get the idea. From a price versus practicality standpoint, this car delivers on its promises and does so while still building in an impressive 5-year limitless warranty and a value-laden standard spec. You'll search in vain for a trip computer on any of the models, which is rather curious. But that aside, you'll find that you won't have to resort to a lengthy options list to get yourself a decently specified car. To that end, all variants feature front fog lights, power heated mirrors, roof rails, remote keyless entry and an alarm immobiliser. Inside, there's automatic air conditioning front and rear with an air quality control system, a leather-covered steering wheel and gear knob, Bluetooth phone connectivity, seat back tables for the second row and a 6-speaker CD stereo with remote steering wheel controls, plus USB, iPod and aux-in points. On a car this large, we would like to have seen rear parking sensors feature in that list, and a full-size spare wheel, come to that. But you do get them in the mid-spec EX model that most will choose, as well as 16-inch alloy wheels, privacy glass and leather seats that are heated up front, and for the driver, power adjustable. If you go for the automatic version, you get cruise control too. That leaves the top ELX 4-wheel drive variant that we've been trying here, which, amongst other things, adds solar-controlled glass with a heated lower front screen section, an auto-dimming rear-view mirror, larger 17-inch alloy wheels and auto headlamps and wipers. A popular option across the range is the Kenwood touchscreen sat-nav setup with its DAB, DVD and media connectivity. Plus, we'd also want to specify the tow bar that's been fitted here. And safety? Well, the Turismo doesn't have a Euro NCAP safety rating, nor does it feature curtain airbags. You do, though, now get twin front and side bags on every model, plus ISOFIX child seat fastenings in the second row, and all the electronic assistance that you expect from a modern MPV. Things like ESP stability control, tyre pressure monitoring, ARP active rollover protection, and a BAS brake assist system to help the standard ABS brakes in a panic stop. Passive safety is further increased thanks to two high-strength subframes fitted to the front and rear of the car. These help to disperse any impact shocks from a frontal or offset collision and protect passengers by minimising cabin distortion. That's good to know. Any MPV this large is never going to be very cheap to run, which is why no brand in this segment offers petrol power anymore. For SsangYong, efficiency took a big leap forward in 2012 when the old 5-cylinder Mercedes-sourced 2.7-litre diesel, used by this model's roadiest predecessor, was replaced by the company's own, far more modern Euro 5 compliant 4-cylinder 2-litre engine. And a further step has been taken here with the replacement of that unit with this Korean maker's more powerful 2.2-litre EXDI 220 power plant. True, the South Korean brand still has a little way to go when it comes to matching the running costs of European large MPV rivals. This car's fuel and CO2 returns are quite a way off those of, say, a Ford Galaxy or a Volkswagen Charan, for instance. Then again, you have to bear in mind that those people carriers aren't really big enough to compete with this one. Pitch a Turismo against MPVs that are, and you'll find that its figures are much closer to the class standard. So, what are those figures? Well, in a manual Turismo, expect 39.2 miles per gallon on the combined cycle and 189 grams per kilometre of CO2. And that's about 2 miles per gallon and 10 grams per kilometre better than before, despite the extra power on offer. True, a rival Mercedes V-Class or Volkswagen Caravelle would be more efficient, but those MPVs are considerably more expensive to buy. It's probably more relevant to note that this Turismo's efficiency showing is vastly better than the returns you get from its closest rival, Hyundai's i800, an MPV that only just cracks 30 miles per gallon and belches out a smoky 225 grams per kilometre of CO2. If, like most likely buyers, you're looking at an automatic version of this car, your running costs are inevitably going to be slightly higher, but the readings are still relatively affordable, 37.7 miles per gallon and 196 grams per kilometre of CO2. If you go for the top automatic four-wheel drive version that we're trying here, the figures are 36.2 miles per gallon and 205 grams per kilometre. Whatever your choice of model variant, you're getting a long operating range from the 80-litre fuel tank. What else? Well, insurance is Group 34D or Group 36D for the four-wheel drive version, and all derivatives get SsangYong's impressively complete, class-leading 5-year limitless mileage warranty. Limitless meaning the lack of the kind of irritating maximum mileage condition that many other brands impose in their small print. Crucially, for many potential business buyers, this package is valid for taxi use, which sets this Turismo apart from rivals such as Hyundai's i800, which has a 5-year warranty, but with a 100,000-mile cap for hire and reward buyers. As you'd expect, the SsangYong Limitless cover deals with all the major mechanical components, including wheel bearings, suspension joints and bushes, steering joints, shock absorbers, and even the audio system. Wearable components such as clutch discs and brake friction materials that could have their life reduced by poor driving are covered for 1 year or 12,000 miles, while the battery and the paintwork are covered for 3 years. What it boils down to is this. Here you've got a huge 7-seat vehicle with 4-wheel drive if you want it, generous amounts of kit, nearly 900 litres of luggage space even when all 7 seats are in place, and a price that gives you change, and potentially lots of change, from £25,000. No other manufacturer can offer you this, and in terms of value, well, you could pay more than that for a little diesel Honda Civic. So, this Turismo wins in terms of practicality per pound, but then so did its roadiest predecessor. That car, though, was difficult to countenance. I mean, it's difficult enough for badge-obsessed British buyers to get their heads around choosing a relatively unknown brand without also throwing willfully curious styling into the mix. But things have changed. Since this Turismo model's 2013 launch, that original design has been visually rehabilitated into the kind of car you'd simply think was large, practical, and maybe even passably smart. Plus, it helps that the SsangYong brand is now better known here, thanks to the success of its SUVs. As perceptions have changed, so Turismo sales have risen. A trend that should continue thanks to the improvements that have created this significantly revised model. The 2.2-litre Euro 6 engine is a much better fit for a big people carrier of this size, as is the smooth shifting Mercedes e-tronic auto gearbox that we think most buyers will want. It should all leave Korea's oldest and most experienced car maker well placed in the large MPV segment, as it searches for value-orientated big families and private hire people prepared to look beyond the obvious choices in their search for super spacious 7-seat practicality. If you are a customer of this kind, it is worth trying a Turismo. In many ways, there's really nothing quite like it.